Hey y'all, I wanted to just take some time today to go back to some basics and just sketch in color for a little bit, and then I stumbled upon something. This site right here. It's called, that? I'll have it linked down below so that you don't have to pause and read it off. It's called Animal Photo Art References Search, aka a mouthful. And what's unique about this site is that you can choose specifically what angle you want the animal to have with the skull that is on the left side. What you do is pick an animal from the drop-down menu. It's not an extensive list, but there are plenty of the common animals that you might want to draw, like wolves, horses, cats, dogs, birds, etc. Even alligators and snakes and other animals like that if you're down. And so once you've picked the animal you want a reference for, you then click and drag the skull around to the desired orientation and angle that you want. Once you've got that, you click search and the right side will populate with images of the animal facing the way that you dictated with the skull. It isn't perfect. There are certain angles that just won't have any results, so they get as close as they can, and you know what? That is fine with me. Even just having the skull in the exact orientation is a huge bonus. You can compare the angle of the skull to a chosen creature and do your best guesswork. You can also click on a picture and it will enlarge, sometimes showing the full body of the creature or giving more background, and they even leave a link to the original source. I've been meaning to do some animal studies, and when I came upon this site, I knew I had to give it a shot, so let's draw some foxes, shall we? I started with a simple, straightforward shot of the face so that I could have a proper reference of the shape of the head and fluff. And there's going to be a ton of accurate results because this is the most common way that most animals are photographed, so I had a lot to choose from. In the end, I went with the one that I thought was well lit and contrasted, and it also ended up being a nice side view of the entire body as well. I clicked on it and enlarged it in a new tab and started sketching. I used my blue Kohl Erase without even thinking about it, honestly, because this is pretty much how I start most of my sketching sessions. It's erasable and light and adds easy color to the page. And since the fox is an overall orange animal, using the blue as its complementary shadow for coloring it later is a neat trick. I mean, I didn't do that on purpose, but thinking back on it, I'll totally take credit for it. With animal heads, I try to break down the shapes, not with circles, though, like I do with humans. With animals, I tend to use boxier shapes to account for the snout. My bad. I'm so used to calling them snoots that I forget they're actually called snouts. Snoot just, it makes more sense. Snoot? Snout? Ugh. So snoot. Anyway, where was I? Shapes. I use boxy shapes instead of circles because they work better for fur? I don't know how to explain it, but when I'm learning new animals or subject matter, I prefer to work in boxier shapes and add the curves and things later. Especially when there's fluffy fur that covers a lot of the exact details of the body. Well, I just explained it, didn't I? The challenge I had with drawing a face with a long nose head on, however, was the foreshortening. There's always a slight angle to the head in organic photos, so the placement of the lines is really important for getting the sketch to look right. Although I will mention right now that although I am trying to recreate the references, I'm not necessarily trying to make it exact. I'm playing around with different ways of sketching and coloring and, of course, anatomy. I've drawn foxes a few times before, so I am pretty familiar with their anatomy already. I mainly wanted to look for more challenging references. I'm just starting off easy to gain some confidence before failing spectacularly, you know? I didn't do a great job on the feet, but I'm going to blame that on the photo because they were hard to see. And by this point, when I was darkening the lines, I had a plan. I know, rare, and possibly dangerous. And so I left them purposely as blobs. So what was this plan? I took out my markers. I know, revolutionary. I grabbed some that I thought would work. Again, wasn't aiming for realism, otherwise I would have just dumped out and used like 20,000 markers for this one sketch. So I grabbed some oranges, a red, a brown, a yellow, a gray, and just started laying down colors roughly according to the reference. The reference had a lot more gray on the tips of the red fur, which would have been really hard to do with markers, and I wasn't about to put that much effort into a sketch. Not to say that I didn't try. I started off with the light gray to put the shadows into the white parts of the fur. I tried to do tiny fur strokes, but the brush nib on these Artist Loft markers are really thick and the ink flows really easily in some of them. On top of that, this marker's nib was just fuzzy? I don't know why, I don't know how, but some of them are fuzzy. Not even dry or like otherwise malfunctioning. They work fine. They're just fuzzy. So thin lines weren't going to happen. Okay, alright, I can work with that. Then the first orange I used was way too neon, which is strange because the set I bought it in was called a pastel set. And this orange is definitely not that. It did help with blending later, though, so, I mean, I guess I'm not mad about it. I swapped it for the color Amber from my Spectrum Noir Illustrator set, and then worked back and forth between this and the yellow and brown until I was more or less satisfied with it. And then I added some red and orange colored pencil because I was curious how it would layer and blend, and in the end, I think it looks pretty good. I had fun with it, at least. With that, I decided to change up the angle of the skull and pick a new reference photo. I figured since I did a straight-on face that I would do a side profile one, and then try something more difficult after I'd gotten a better grasp of the fox's shapes. Though I didn't notice this until I began editing, for some reason, when I opened the image I chose in a new tab, it mirrored itself, meaning I was drawing a different side profile than the one I intended. Not that it matters, because it's still a side profile, it's just facing the other way, but yeah, I didn't notice that till I was editing, so, I'm just confused that I didn't even notice it, but I mean, brains are weird, man. This sketch, I used my orange colored pencil as the base, though I really couldn't give you a reason why. I figured I would do some simple shading for this one, but in the end, I tried to use all my colored pencils, because I don't know what it means to keep things simple. I've been saying they're simple, but I never actually leave things as simple. It's a curse. Like I was saying about doing this with colored pencils, I forgot the word for a moment, I want to try and do a couple foxes with slightly different approaches, so this one ended up being just straight colored pencils. I mean, at least up until the end, where I take the orange marker from the last one and attempt to layer it on top with the colored pencils, but that didn't really work, so I'd love to pretend that I didn't even do it in the first place. Okay? Okay. Good. Glad we're all in agreement. The problem I had with these colored pencils... Well, okay, first, I'll just come out and say it. User error was an issue. I'm not really a colored pencil person. I've seen people do incredible realism with them, but I am just not one of those people. In addition, though, I also only have 12 pencils. 12 good ones, that is. These are the Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils, and they work beautifully, but I only have 12, and I'm not great at blending them. I do have another set that's Crayola, but if I'm bad at blending the good ones, then what hope do I have for blending the Crayola pencils? Exactly. Either way, I give it my best shot with one brown and one black that I had, and tried to make it look like that dusty tan gray thing going on in the reference. I don't think I succeeded, but at least I tried. I don't think any part of the coloring on this was particularly good, if I'm being honest, but I at least like that it looks like a fox, you know? That's where the bar's at, people. Nice and real low. Like, almost to the floor. Like, maybe an inch above the floor, but, like, pretty much at the floor. So, yeah, that's how this one turned out. I'm ready for the next one, so let's go. For the third reference, I tried to find an upward angle from below because, at least for me, it's a pretty difficult angle to draw, but I wanted to give it a shot. Unfortunately, this was one of those angles that the search couldn't really populate. I imagine it's not exactly a shot many photographers can get of foxes, so like, I get it, but I was hopeful. Instead, I just picked out the first one because he had a funny face. And I should have known that funny faces are the hardest to draw. I don't know why this one was so difficult to draw. It seemed simple enough. It was well lit. The features were big and easy to follow, and yet I just couldn't get it to look right. For this sketch, or series of sketches, I decided to use my regular mechanical pencil, so that's also maybe something there, but classic. But no matter what size, no matter what shapes I tried to use, I could not get this to look right to save my life. So I did the smart and sane thing and gave up. Moved right on to the next one. Can't have a video with all perfect sketches, no. Seeing as the previous one was not great, I decided to do one more in the hopes that I could find something really neat. I wanted to do a top-down angle because I thought this search might be a little bit more accurate, and it sort of was. It wasn't as extreme as I was hoping, but honestly, all the pictures that came up were super duper cute, and I wanted to draw all of them and take them all home, but I can't do either of those, so I picked one and went with it. And unfortunately, I forgot to hit record at the start of this sketch, so you don't get to see me work on the head, which, honestly, I was really proud of. Foreshortened ears on an animal are apparently the one type of foreshortening that I can actually accomplish. Go figure. The rest of this animal actually went pretty well too. Thankfully, this reference had the full body and it was at a really extreme angle, so that makes up for not getting the head at an extreme angle. This entire sketch I just did with the Cool Erase pencil. I did a tiny bit of shading, all going in the same direction. Actually kept it simple. And I mean it this time. I really did keep it simple. And the great thing about this reference photo being at such an extreme angle is that I'm forced to focus on the actual shapes of the body and not just where I think it goes. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. Then, when I finished this one, I decided to try and go even simpler. I took my orange pencil again, which I really should have sharpened, but I just didn't think to do it at the time, and tried to exaggerate the features now that I was more comfortable with them. And I mean, it sort of worked. If I'd had a sharper pencil, I would have had more control over the lines, but oh well. Nothing I can do about it at this point. It came out about as well as it could, all things considered, and it's a design I might work a bit more on later. Maybe make it cuter? Maybe put it up in my Redbubble? Maybe? I also did another simplistic version of a fox with an ink brush pen. I just went with the flow and used whatever lines I made. Very gestural, not really atomically correct. Atomically, and very much not polished because I didn't sketch underneath, but it was a lot of fun. I really recommend it, honestly. It was nice and freeing, and it made the sketch next to it look so much better by comparison, so that's another reason to do it. But that's it for my spread of foxes. I think I'm going to take some time to look up other parts of their bodies to draw, like the toe beans. Ooh, yes, the toe beans. I like toe beans. But today was nice to just try and get the overall shapes down. I also wanted to test out this site, and I really like it. Like I said earlier, I'll have it linked down below, so you should check it out. Even if you're not using it to draw, it's neat to play around with, and I had a lot of fun with it. And with that, I want to thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like maybe, or write a comment down below telling me what you thought, which foxes were your favorite, or maybe suggest other animals I could try this out with. I upload every Tuesday and Friday, so be sure to subscribe if you haven't already to see more of my content as it comes out. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye!